That's the word she used, resistance. Albie Amankona joins me, political commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Is Suella Braverman guilty of racism?
No, I wouldn't go as far as saying that Suella Braverman is guilty of racism. She certainly says that she wants to speak very plainly to the British people and really address the British people's problems. All I would say is that is a very admirable goal, but I think all politicians have to be mindful that also what they say has to be useful. And I don't think some of the rhetoric
and true,
coming out
ideally.
of the... Yes, useful and true. And I don't think some of the rhetoric coming from various ministers has been particularly helpful on the issue of migration.
So would you disagree with Sayeeda Warzi that as she said to James there, she says, yes, Suella Braverman's rhetoric is racist. You're calling it unhelpful.
I think the rhetoric, as I mentioned before, is unhelpful. On the issue of Sayeeda Warzi, this is just the latest in a long line of attacks on the Conservative Party. I've got a lot of respect for, of course, Sayeeda. I think she was the first British Asian Conservative Party chairman. She's done a lot of work for the Conservative Party, but she has been very critical of the Conservative Party since she's left government. And actually what I think is more important is that we try and engage with the party where it is. And if we actually look at the policies
on migration... That's what she's trying to do, isn't she?
If we actually look at the policies of migration that the party has, I don't think you could call them right-wing and extremist. After we left the European Union, we've seen a huge increase in immigrants from non-European countries. More black and brown people come to the country than ever before. That's not right-wing extremists. So I think we've got to be careful with our language and make sure what we're saying is useful.
Have you let down the voters?
I don't necessarily think that what Sayeeda's saying is useful either. I think we've got to take a much more calm and measured approach.
Have you let down the voters who delivered Brexit? Many Conservatives, not all, obviously, because they wanted less immigration, didn't they? And we don't have less immigration.
There were lots of reasons why people voted for Brexit. Immigration was one of them. Having a greater control of our own destiny by having more sovereignty was another one. Having access to control our own trade deals with another one. I don't think we can just say simply because we have more immigrants coming from India and Africa that Brexit has been betrayed. I don't think that's true at all. People voted to leave the European Union for a variety of different reasons.
But for those for whom it was numbers, and numbers are what drive the concern around the boats, you say, I'm sorry, but the numbers are the numbers. Get over it.
The numbers are the numbers, and the simple fact of the matter is, at this very moment in time, we do have job shortages in various different sectors which cannot be filled by the native population. That is why those are being plugged with immigration. In the long term, it's absolutely right to say we need to be focusing on homegrown talent, but in the short term, and the government has accepted this, yes, we will need migration in the short term to plug employment gaps. Otherwise, inflation will be persistent and we won't be able to get the services that we all need.
But we're not going to get a magical uplift in women having more babies, are we?
No, that is exactly why we need to be applying a more pro-natalist approach to policy. I think that's something which has been missing from government policy, not just the Conservative government.
What do you mean by that?
By making having families more attractive. I think one of the huge barriers.
So you do want women to have more babies?
Yes, of course. Why wouldn't I want more British families to have children? We've got to give people.
Well, the ones I talk to tell me they can barely afford the ones they have, and the childcare is too expensive for them to have children and work at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the last budget, the Chancellor announced a new childcare package. Obviously, that's a few years down the track.
Yeah, but the previous one didn't work. So why should the new one?
I think you're being very cynical, Sheila.
I'm not. I'm telling you. The previous. I'm really not. Albie, I'm really not. You know, the first one didn't work.
Very seriously. They've pledged billions of pounds to a new scheme, and hopefully that is going to deliver the support that people need to have families. But that's not the only support that people need. The actual biggest cost out of the pockets of British people are housing costs, and the housing costs are just too high. We've got to be building more homes as well. So there's a lot of work to do on a pro-natal policy platform for Britain.
Pro-natal, okay. Can I ask you, if, let's say for the sake of argument, we have, because we know this will be true at some level, let's use the NHS as an example. We have a doctor, a nurse, a physiotherapist. They are from the Philippines, they are from Africa, and they are from Spain. They are very skilled people and have lived here for 10 years and intend to stay here. they have children. Would you regard those children as British children?
Of course I would, Sheila. I am the son of Ghanaian migrants on my father's side.
So when you say pro-natalist, you don't mean white?
No, of course I don't mean white, Sheila. You can't see me, but I'm black. So when I say pro-natal, I mean an increase in the birth rate of the British population as it is currently, and that is including all of the different races, ethnicities and religions that we have in Britain at the moment.
And asylum seekers who are successful and settle here.
And that would include anyone who is either a successful asylum seeker and a legal immigrant into this country, as my grandparents were, would be included in this family of Britishness that we have. And it's a very successful community that we've built in this country, and immigration has been a huge part of that.
So for now, as things are now, and we really are relying heavily in some of those sectors I mentioned, on immigrant workers, are they just a holding pattern? Or are they fully welcome here in the UK? Because if I was listening to this as somebody who'd just come from India to be a nurse, or from the Philippines to be a nurse, I'd be thinking, I don't think Albie Amankona wants me to stay here for long. He'd rather British babies and their mum and dad lived here.
I would rather that we could sustain our economy without mass migration. That doesn't mean that immigrants aren't welcome in the country. I think it is certainly preferable, rather than importing workers, to have enough workers that are born in Britain to sustain the economy. That's not been the case for the last 30 years. It might not be the case for a long time yet. We've got to work with what we have, but I do not feel, I don't feel ashamed to say that I would like to see Britain be more self-reliant when it comes to its own labour force.
I'm genuinely not seeking to shame you or to make you feel ashamed about it. I just think the term pro-natalist has so many levels to discuss in it, including the lives of women, because one of the reasons birth rates are lower, and we can discuss the problems that can bring as much as the solutions it brings to women. One of the reasons is that women are more highly educated than they used to be. I'm talking about over the last 50, 60 years, more highly educated than they used to be, work more full-time in jobs and careers than they used to. If you're saying to women, you kind of want that undone a bit, that might not be what they want, Albie.
I don't know what's giving you the impression that I want to undo decades of progress on feminism. All I have said is that I think it should be incumbent on the government to make it easier for people to have families if and when they want to do that. And simply at the moment, it is too hard because the costs are too high. You noted childcare costs were too high. I agree with you. I noted that housing costs are too high. I hope you agree with me on that. The government needs to be making it easier for people to be having children in this country so that if and when they make that decision, it's as easy as possible for them, and they don't face any unnecessary barriers imposed by the state.
And if every adult woman had one extra baby, it's still going to be 20 years before, 22, 23 years probably, before they join the workforce, isn't it?
Precisely, which is why I said in the short term, you still need migration. The government has actually accepted that. In the latest budget, the ABR forecast actually included, I think it was figures of 250,000 net migrants for next year because of that exact problem that you highlight. Having a more pro-family approach to government and reaping the rewards of that is not something which can happen overnight. It will take decades, but that doesn't mean it's not something which I think that the government should do.
Does it worry you that we have a Home Secretary who uses language that a former chair of the party, now a member of the House of Lords, regards as racist?
It worries me that it seems that we are more focused now on rhetoric than actual practical policies that are deliverable. But it
does matter, doesn't it?
Of course it matters. And my concern is that at the next general election, we will have had a whole lot of rhetoric, but this issue of stopping the boats might not have actually have been solved. And then at that point, how do we say to the British people that we can stick to our word when we've not been able to deliver? So I think the Conservative Party needs to think about what is actually deliverable before the next general election, before we say things.
Well, it would help if they designed a policy that was deliverable, and that is not, is it?
Well, I think in terms of the policy, I think you're probably hinting at the Rwanda policy. I know that they are
and the stopping of the boats.
Yeah, and the stopping of the boats. But I think it's perfectly reasonable for politicians to set themselves a goal of stopping the boats. But they've got to actually, the policy's got to be all-encompassing. Actually, with the illegal migration bill, one of the things which happened recently, of course, is Tim Loughton's amendment. He's an MP from Sussex, who I actually know quite well. And he actually wants I think in the House of Lords, the government to accept an amendment to the bill where they will be accepting, I think, up to 20,000 migrants through safe and legal routes, and also changes to the way that child migrants are dealt with. I think that's perfectly practical. I've always advocated a firm but fair approach to migration. That's got to include both a strong deterrent, and it seems that that's around at the moment,
and a better Home Office, a better functioning Home Office.
Home Office administration is important. I think the Home Office is a department which has suffered from poor administration for a very long time, and that's not necessarily the Home Secretary's fault. It's a difficult and unwieldy
It is
department.
now.
Perhaps it needs to be broken up.
It is now. It's her responsibility whether she likes it or not. Thank you very much indeed, Albie. That's given us lots of food for thought. Albie Amankona, political commentator, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. He wants you to have more babies, and he does not think Suella Braverman's rhetoric is racist. He regards it as unhelpful.